Alright guys, I am back with a new Out of the Park Baseball 19 tutorial, and today we're talking about the Rule 5 draft, which is awesome because I've had multiple people already ask about the Rule 5 draft, so I'm glad to be able to explain this with you all and just share. It's actually a really cool opportunity, especially if you're playing as a rebuilding ball club. There's a lot of cool things that can happen to you in the Rule 5 draft. So the Rule 5 draft is something that takes place in Major League Baseball every year. It takes place in December. Right now we're in December 16th, 2018. It takes place in the middle of December, and the goal of the Rule 5 draft is essentially to prevent the stockpiling of minor league talent. So I'll just give you guys kind of a quick example. If you have a team like the Yankees or the Dodgers in particular, they have a lot of great players, and these players are taking up roster spots. And the Dodgers and the Yankees may in fact have players within their minor league system who are of major league talent but haven't quite gotten the opportunity to shine yet. And what the Rule 5 draft allows these players to do, if they're eligible, is that they can be essentially snatched from them by other teams, and those other teams then have to use that player on the active roster and actually use them in the major leagues. That's kind of the stipulation of the whole thing. So in order for a player to be Rule 5 draft eligible, it depends on what age they were when they entered the minor league system and became a professional baseball player. So for players that were originally 18 or under when they were drafted or perhaps signed on as international amateurs, they need between 4 to 7 years of time spent in the minor league system, accruing what is called professional service time, which is different from sort of major league service time. You see, if you're in the minor leagues, you're still a professional player because you're playing for money. As little money as that may be. If you're drafted at age 19 or later, so that's generally going to be your college players, then anywhere between 3 to 6 years you can be Rule 5 draft eligible. You don't necessarily need to know that, however, because it's actually quite simple. If you come right here to your rosters and transactions screen, you will see that there's this hashtag down here, and the hashtag denotes Rule 5 draft eligibility. So we can look at our AAA team, and all of these players with hashtags are Rule 5 draft eligible and could theoretically be snatched away from us. So I'll give you guys an example of how a team who has a guy who's Rule 5 draft eligible could prevent that player from being Rule 5 drafted. So here's the case of Trevor Oaks, who I've already essentially made a protected player. Now, Trevor Oaks has not played in the major leagues yet. He hasn't made his debut for the Kansas City Royals. But you can see he's a 2-star starting pitcher with 2.5-star potential, so he's the type of guy that, depending on what you have going on at starting pitching, you would maybe want to use a Rule 5 draft pick on him. So what we've done is protected him, and the way we've protected him is by adding him to the 40-man roster. Now, the 40-man roster is different from the 25-man roster, the 25-man roster being the active roster. Players on the 40-man roster earn major league salaries, and that's kind of what sets them apart from minor leaguers. So Trevor Oaks, as you can see right now, he is on minor league contract, but that'll be updated going into the next season, and he will earn the league minimum of $500,000. So that's kind of the price we pay to protect him. All right. So now that we've got that out of the way, I'm going to show you another player. This guy's in AAA right now. His name is Walker Lockett, another pitcher, 1.5-star potential. 1.5-star overall. You can see his ratings right there. He's not particularly amazing, but 2-star potential. And he has the hashtag right next to him. And actually, another thing you can do is you can go and you can look at his contract, and you can see that his time as professional is 6 years. So, definitely Rule 5 draft eligible. And as you can see, he is eligible. So he's not the type of guy that a team would necessarily be clamoring over to Rule 5 draft. So under normal circumstances, I wouldn't protect him, but for the sake of this tutorial, I will show you guys how to go about protecting him. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on MLB, and before we enter the Rule 5 draft, we're going to get to know the draft pool just a little bit better. So here are all the players that are eligible to be Rule 5 drafted. They could be ours, they could be ours, and the only stipulation being that we would have to keep them on the active roster playing in Major League Baseball for the whole following season. Now that's kind of a big commitment to a player, but for a rebuilding team, it's not so much. But as you can imagine, for an amazing team, roster spots really come at a premium, and you don't want to spend them wasted on a guy who, okay, maybe he'll be good someday, but he's definitely not good now. So, yeah, so I've sort of identified a few guys. This team has really weak starting pitching, so I was kind of looking and asking myself, okay, so what kind of starting pitchers could someone get? You can see it's a bunch of 2-star starting pitchers and 1.5-star starting pitchers. When you sort by potential, there's two that sort of I saw here. One of them is Jacob Nix. He's a right-handed pitcher in the Padres organization. He just had a nice year in AA, so he's the type of guy that if you're, maybe looking to take a chance on him, he's already 1.5 stars. He's got 2.5-star potential, so that's pretty good. This other guy, Peralta, here's a guy that's an example where even though he's got some potential, he's not major league ready, and he's not the type of guy I would spend a Rule 5 draft pick on. What makes a good Rule 5 draft candidate is this combination of being major league ready, or at least close to it, but with also some potential to grow. Those guys are the ideal sort of picks for Rule 5. So they're not going to completely, biff it in the major leagues for you the next season and just have you actively losing ball games. But they can also have some potential to grow, and they can become a really cool asset for your team. So one of the reasons I'm looking at Nix right now is because this team has major problems at starting pitching, and he's the type of guy that he could be, a fifth arm in the rotation for us. Or perhaps even a long reliever of sorts for the following year while we have him on the roster. And the other position I wanted to look at was actually third base, because we have pretty much nobody at third base right now, and this guy stood out to me. Another 1.5-star guy with 2.5-star potential. I like that his batting ratings are already kind of coming along. He's got 60 home run power. He's listed as a first baseman right now, but as you can see, he's 45 defense at third base, so he is at least semi-capable of playing the position. He just hit really well at AA level, so that's better than drafting someone who, say, was hitting well at rookie ball. So that's the guy I'm looking at. I'm just going to go to the starting pitching screen right now, and I'm going to scroll down here. And here's our guy, Walker Lockett. As you can see, he's actually bolded because I added him to a short list. A good thing to do to just act as a double checking is if you've followed my prospects tutorial, you'll know to add your top prospects to a short list. That means when you're scrolling down on a list of those Rule 5 draft eligible, you won't accidentally leave a really good prospect Rule 5 draft eligible that you don't want to, that you really want to keep around and that you think, oh, you're afraid maybe someone would pick him. So here's Lockett. He's Rule 5 draft eligible. As you can see, he's not really that much more special from the crowd. He doesn't really stand out in any way like, say, Nix does. So he's not a guy I would necessarily be worried about being Rule 5 drafted and snatched away from us. But I will go ahead and do is protect him, and the way to protect them is to add them to the 40-man roster, the secondary 40-man roster. So this will ensure that Lockett gets a nice major league paycheck for next season. But in exchange for that, we will be able to protect him. So as I place him on the 40-man, you can see he disappears. So he's no longer Rule 5 draft eligible. He's a protected player for us. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to go into the Rule 5 draft. And as you can see, we have the third pick, so that's good. So hopefully we can get Nix, or I can't remember the guy's name, but the third baseman with the power. All right. So we are going to do is we are going to auto draft until our next pick. And I'm looking at starting pitchers. And Nix is available. All right. So by drafting Jacob Nix, I have pretty much signed on to him being on the active roster, the active major league roster for the full year next year. But I do get to snatch him away from the Padres, so that's nice. One thing that I would like to add is that if I were to trade Jacob Nix, the team that receives him in the trade next would still have to comply with the rules of the Rule 5 draft, so they would have to keep him on the active roster. And another thing I'll say is that once that year is up, I can actually do whatever I want with Nix. I have full control of him, so I could send him down to AAA if he really struggled. So I'm going to go ahead and draft him. All right, and we just got him for free, basically. So this is why Rule 5 draft is great. If you're a rebuilding team, you have these roster spots, and you can kind of take chances. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to advance the draft number. So I'm going to auto draft until my next pick. Okay, and now I'm going to look at those third basemen. And our guy's been Rule 5 drafted. Well, that's a real bummer. That's a real bummer, because I really thought, he could be something for us. As you can see, these guys right here, it's not they're bad necessarily, but they're just not quite that major league ready that you would want them to be. There was another guy who caught my eye, and he was a catcher. Yeah, okay, terrific. This guy's name is Austin Allen. He to me, he stood out as a very good candidate because you can see he's got that mix of potential, room still to grow. He did well in AA last season. So yeah, I'm actually just gonna pick him as a backup move, and he could be our backup catcher. The Royals are actually a team with a pretty good catching situation already, but we can go ahead and draft him just for example's sake. I've simped through this whole year. I haven't touched anything. It's really just for show. This isn't a save that I actually play in. So I go ahead and draft him. Now, one thing that I will say right now is that in the real life Rule 5 draft, there's a whole minor league sort of rounds. So these are players that they have, it's really complicated rules, but you can snatch guys and still keep them in your minor league system, but you have to keep them at a certain level or pay a certain amount of money. Thankfully, Out of the Park Baseball does not have this, so I don't really have to explain it to you. But if you did really want to learn about it, you could just Google Rule 5 draft. There's a Wikipedia article. There's probably an article on MLB.com that helps explain exactly how it works. So I will just give you guys a little bit of Rule 5 draft history right now, because it does have implications in real life. One player who was Rule 5 drafted, and it's a very interesting story, is Johan Santana. And Santana, I believe, it was organized through trade. So as I said before, when you trade a player, those stipulations still stand. So I believe it was arranged in such a way that the Padres drafted him from the Astros. I'm not sure if it was the Padres that were the middleman here, but I think it was. So the Padres, Rule 5, drafted him from the Astros, immediately traded him to the Minnesota Twins. Now, what was interesting about Santana's Rule 5 draft eligibility is that he'd never even pitched above A ball, so he wasn't really even all that major league ready, and that's part of the reason why the Astros organization chose not to add them to their 40-man. So Santana now on the Twins and had to stick with the Twins for a full year. As you can imagine, for a pitcher that's not major league ready, maybe not the best thing. He had a bad season. His ERA was like 6-something. But yeah, after that full year had gone through, the Twins had full control, and they were able to send him down to AAA just for a little bit that next year. But really, he had come along very nicely, and for the next 5 years or so, 5 or 6 or 7 years, he was probably the best pitcher in baseball. So a real good Rule 5 success story, even though in that immediate year he didn't really help the team. Another player who was really good that was Rule 5 drafted would be Jose Bautista. So you can find very good players in Rule 5 draft. Not terribly common, but if you're lucky, you can really make a nice move in the Rule 5 draft, and that's why it is important. All right, so now I've explained that. Now that we've Rule 5 drafted our players, what I'm going to do is I'm going to complete the draft. And after I complete the draft, I'm going to check my mail real quick. You'll receive a letter or an email in your mailbox if one of the players in your organization is Rule 5 drafted. So I'm just going to go double check that. News and mail. As you can see, I've simped through the whole year and not really done anything. Nope, no one was picked from us. You would get a notification that says, hey, the Padres picked your guy. Yeah, so if we go here, we can see right now that I'm going to look at our pitching. And actually, they may be... Where are they? They would have to be on the 40-man. Oh, yeah, okay, Nix has been listed as a reliever. I don't have control in the roster in that sort of way, so that's fine. But yeah, as you can see, Nix is on now on our roster as a reliever, which is cool. As you can see, he's also, and then if we look at our catchers, Austin Allen's there too. So yeah, we'll be forced to keep them on the major league rosters for the next following year, and that's sort of the price you pay. So what I'm actually going to do right now is I'm going to go to the main menu, start screen. Now I'm going to load one of my saves, and I'm going to show you guys a recent sort of Rule 5 success story I've had in an actual save of mine. what kind of makes this one unique is that my team has gotten to a point where it's pretty good, so a player would really have to catch my eye in the Rule 5 draft in order for me to pick him. It's not horribly common for a team to pick a player in Rule 5 draft. Teams can often go years at a time before picking one player, and then sometimes you'll have teams who pick multiple players in a year. So it's important when you get to the Rule 5 draft, don't feel like you're obligated to pick anyone. Just really take a look at who's available in the pool and look at the weaknesses and strengths of your team and decide, okay, maybe this guy could really help my team both in the short term and in the long term. Boy, this is taking some time to load. I believe we're almost there. Please? Nearly there. Ever so nearly there. Okie dokie. So, I'm right before spring training here, but I'm just going to show you a guy that I have on my pitching staff. He is a reliever, and his name is Chris Cameron. As you can see, I acquired him through Rule 5 draft pick from Detroit in 2026, and in my 2027 as a reliever, he pitched 68 innings for me, 3.31 ERA. He was really good. And now that year has passed, I have full control, so I could send him down to the minors if I wanted to, but I'm not going to because, as you can see, he's a pretty good player. He pitched well for me last year. So even on a good team, I was able to pick up a reliever for free, and he turned out to be really good for me. And I will also take a look at his pitching stats here because I want to show you guys how that he was also very good in the postseason for me. And we made a nice World Series run. We didn't win it, but we made a nice World Series run, and his stellar performance in relief definitely was helpful. So yeah, Chris Cameron, Rule 5 draft pick of mine, successful one at that. So yeah, definitely, even if you're a solid, well put together team, you may have like a spot at reliever or like a utility infield or a backup catcher where you may just want to take a chance on a young Rule 5 guy. All right, so that concludes the tutorial. We've talked about Rule 5, we've talked about how the draft itself works, we've talked about what it takes for a player to be eligible, we've talked about what position certain teams may be in, so how a team with a lot of great assets may have these players in their minor league system that are major league ready but haven't quite been given the chance. We may talk about how a rebuilding team has roster spots to burn basically and doesn't have much to lose by offering up a Rule 5, by allowing a Rule 5 drafted player to take up a roster spot for a full season. So yeah, that concludes our tutorial. And hope you guys are enjoying the series so far. Feel free to leave any feedback or comments. One thing that I would like to point out right now, and I'll point it out at the start of my next video, is that I do leave sort of these timestamps in the description. So if at any time you feel like the video is too long, you can go look at the timestamps and say, okay, this is really what I want to learn about. So they're kind of split by individual topic covered throughout the video. So yeah, hope you guys are enjoying the series. And yeah, I'm signing off for now, but I don't really know what my next video will be, but looking forward to doing it for sure. So thank you once again, and goodbye.